and welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela Ann, the friend of all the good YA book recs and literary lifestyle tips. Today, I'm kind of introducing an experiment as well as giving you all a free template. We're going to be discussing how I will be tracking my reading in March using Notion. I discovered Notion in December of 2020, probably when a lot of people discovered it. I have a planner, but I don't really use my planner anymore. I basically just use Notion. However, when I first set it up in 2021, I saw some people talk about how they had reading boards for Notion or they tracked their reading on Notion, and I've always been a little bit anti-tracking my reading, mainly because then it just feels like it's like a chore that I need to do, and I'm afraid I'm not gonna like it as much if I'm trying to force myself to do it. I still do set reading goals, and I track how many books I read per year in Goodreads. My reading goal for 2021 was to try to read, kind of like I had a good and better goal. My good goal was to read one book a week, and my better goal was to read 2 books every week. I knew I wasn't gonna be able to read 2 books every single week, but it still was a great thing to strive for. In January, I read 6 books, so I did pretty good. In February, I read 3 books. So definitely not a stellar reading month. I didn't even hit my good goal of reading 4 books. There's also, if I'm being completely honest, a lot of hours I clocked in watching Netflix in February. So it wasn't like I was super busy and that's why I wasn't reading. It was like Gilmore Girls had taken my attention. When I was planning out March and my March goals, my March goal is going to be to read 5 books. That's gonna be 1 to make up for that book I didn't read in February that I should have, and then 4 for my 1 book a week original 2021 good goal. I don't want to try to read 2 books every single week just because March is going to be a busy month. In April, I am defending my research thesis as well as presenting my research at a bunch of giant conferences, and I'm still not done writing the thesis. So that's going to take a lot of my time in March. I just want to make sure that I'm being cognizant of other things that I have going on. 5 books seems like a really reasonable goal to me. However, I wasn't just going to say I was going to read 5 books. I decided to do kind of a little bit of an experiment and create a tracker to track my reading. Trackers are pretty popular here on the book internet community. I think a lot of people use bullet journals to track, which can be extremely cool if you're good at art. I am personally not someone who is good at art. Even just my handwriting in my journal, just to show you guys, like, my handwriting even is just ugly. I got an ad the other day, it was like, make your handwriting into a font. And I thought, no one needs my handwriting as a font. It's so bad. Bullet journaling was out of the question. So the next thing I thought of was, well, Goodreads, right? I'm already tracking on Goodreads. Maybe there's a way I can track more, like a weekly tracker. Goodreads does not really have that functionality. It's really just for tracking the books you read each year, which I really like because then I can go back. Sometimes I'll like pick up a book and it'll sound familiar and I'm not sure if I've read it or not, so I can go back into Goodreads and check to see if I've read it. Am I the only one who forgets all the books that they read? So Goodreads wasn't an option either. The third thing I thought of was maybe I could just write in my journal like a list every day of how many books I was reading, and that might seem like it was okay, but I really wanted to find a way to break down the page numbers so I knew I was reading, because sometimes in my daily habit tracker, I will check that I read, but I only read like 1 page of a book and then fell asleep, and that's not really productive. So now in that habit tracker, I want to be able to say, yes, I read 45 pages today, check for reading, or, oh, I only read 10 pages today, no check for reading. In order then to figure out how many pages I needed to read a day in order to read 5 books this month, I decided to create a Notion template. There were a couple of things I wanted to add to my reading plan that you will see in the template. The first was due dates. I wanted to add a due date for each book for when it should be done to keep myself on track. This definitely made it seem more like an assignment than I would want it to, but I actually give my writing due date, and I still enjoy writing, so I figure even if I give myself due dates, I might still enjoy reading. I think my fear of due dates is just that I've never really enjoyed reading for class before, and I'm afraid it's gonna feel like a class setting, but if my writing doesn't feel like it's a writing assignment for a class, then I don't get why reading for fun would feel that way. The second thing I needed to make sure I did was that my trickle-down goal system was present in my reading tracker. If you don't know what my trickle-down goal system is, it's basically that I like to create yearly goals, which break down into quarterly goals, which break down into monthly goals, which break down into weekly goals, which break down into daily tasks. I'm a huge believer that your goals need to be seen on every single level. That's just been a really productive way for me to actually accomplish my big goals. So I highly recommend, even with other things than reading, just sit down and say what you want to do in a year and then break it down into quarters and then break it down into months and then weeks and then days. You can just start with quarter 1 too. That's what I usually do. I plan it like quarter by quarter, month by month, if that makes sense. But it's a really great system. So I took my yearly goal of 52 books, and then in March I wanted to read 5 books to help get there. Then I created weekly reading goals, and we'll go back into the Notion system so you can see what my weekly reading goals are, but it's usually 1 book, except the 1 week I have spring break, it is 2 books. And then I broke it down into the daily page counts. I also scheduled in those due dates throughout the weeks so I know when certain books are due. The third thing that was really key to me in this reading tracker was having that daily accountability. So again, like I said, I will be tracking my daily reading on my habit tracker, which is in a separate Notion page, but I also really wanted to make sure that I had some sort of accountability on the page. So I also have it where I'm going to be writing in the page numbers or the pages that I read that day. The fourth thing then was making sure I was scheduling time to read. This will be done on a weekly basis, but I basically want to look at what I have going on in my life and then schedule in reading time instead of just keeping my evenings free like I usually do, because when my evenings are free, I tend to watch Netflix over read, which is something I'm trying to curb. So with those 4 things in mind, I set out to Notion, and if you guys don't know what Notion is, I've mentioned it a couple of times in this video, but I haven't fully explained it yet. Notion is a productivity app. It's kind of similar. I don't even know what it's similar to. I feel like there's a couple out there like that, like Asana is out there, but what I like about Notion is it's really aesthetically pleasing. There's a lot of opportunities to change the font and change the layout and add lists, add quotes, add pictures, whatever you want to add to your pages. So I really like that aspect of it. It is free to use, which is really nice as well. And again, I just really like the aspects that Notion has to offer. I will say that I have a lot of Notion boards. So if you guys are interested in like my content creation Notion board, I actually don't really track a lot of my writing on Notion, but I also track like my daily habits on Notion. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, comment down below and I'll either make a video or a reel / TikTok going over the rest of my Notion boards for you. The reading tracker one has 3 main parts. The first part goes over the books that I want to read during the month. So here at the beginning of the month, you can just write down all the books you think you might read. Obviously, this is flexible. I don't usually create strict TBRs. I like to see my TBRs more as potential books I could read, just in case I'm just feeling like reading something else and I'm not in the mood. Like, let's say, for example, I wrote down like 3 contemporaries and I wasn't in the mood for a contemporary. I don't want to feel constricted in having to read those books. I want to have the flexibility to choose a different book. With those potential books I could read, I also wrote down the page numbers and the due dates. And obviously, if I switched out a book, I would just have the book I switched out be with the corresponding due date. So if a book was due on March 9th and I switched out for another book, then that new book would be due on March 9th as well. The books I chose for this month, the first one is The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I have a book club over on Patreon and it's a really fun time, so I'll link it down below if you want to join. But The Cousins is the book that we are reading for the book club this month. So obviously I want to read this. I also love Karen M. McManus, so I'm super excited. And The Cousins has 321 pages. It's going to be due on March 7th. The second book I want to read is a writing craft book. It was my goal to read at least 3 writing craft books this year. I've so far read 0, and the book I want to read is On Writing by Stephen King. This book is 316 pages and it'll be due March 14th. The third book I want to read, I'm super excited about this book, is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I actually don't have this book yet, but it should be arriving from Amazon tomorrow, and it is a 637 page book. This is quite a long book, but it's the one I'm going to be reading over my days off, and so it'll be due on March 24th. The fourth book that I want to read is actually a book I have to read for school. I don't really know if books that you have to read for uni should be counted towards your yearly reading goal. I personally count it because it's still a book read. For one of my classes, I had to choose a nonfiction science book to read. I'm going to be reading Livewired by David Eagleman. I think it has like a colon and then a longer title, but I don't know the longer title. I'll put it up on the screen or something. It's basically a book about how we can use neuroscience in order to improve our lives and make our neuroplasticity stronger, so our brains are stronger. So it sounds really interesting. I heard him actually on Brene Brown's podcast talking about his new book that was coming out, Livewired, and he was just such a fascinating person. So when I was given this assignment, that was the first book that came to mind. This book is 352 pages. I am a little bit nervous because it's a nonfiction and it usually takes longer, especially a dense sciencey nonfiction, but I'm hoping to read it by the end of the month on March 31st. I will actually be reading this one in tandem with a book that is fun. That book is Can't Take That Away by Stephen Salvatore. This book comes out on March 9th. I was kind enough to be sent an ARC by Bloomsbury, and I just haven't read it yet, but it looks like like a really great, just cutesy YA contemporary. So I'm super excited to read that book. It is 368 pages and it is also going to be due on March 31st. After I decided what the books were I was going to read, I went down to the reading plan section of the Notion template. In this section, the first thing I did was write the average daily word count. Based on the pages that I have to read, the average daily word count is 45. I'm not sure I'm going to read 45 pages every single day, and I think some days like Friday nights or on those days that I have off from university, I think I will end up reading more. After the weekly goals section, we go down into the daily page count tracker. Here, what I have is kind of a 3-column thing on the template attached to this video, or like linked to this video, attached to this video. Can you tell I've been sending too many work emails lately? On the template linked in this video, you'll see that it's completely blank. There's like 31 rows, and that's because I want to make sure you guys can use this whether you're watching this video when it comes out in March 2021 or if you're watching it in like July of 2022. I want to make sure that it's a evergreen template. So what you do, there's 31 rows, so obviously no matter how many days there are in the month, you should be able to write it into the tracker. You can go in and write in all the dates. I wrote in March 1st through the 31st. The next column is page numbers, and that column is going to be used to track how many pages I read at the end of the day. Actually, most likely the next morning, because usually at the end of the day I'm kind of a slug and I don't really want to be on my computer, which is another reason why it would be great to start reading more than watching Netflix at night, because then I wouldn't be on my computer. I'm on my computer when I watch Netflix. It's just better for my mental health when I like unplug at nighttime. So that's the next column. And then the third column is the expected column. So here I'm going to write down what book I want to be reading that day and the expected number of pages I need to read, kind of like a minimum, in order to meet my goal. So this is going to be a really great way to be able to track kind of expectations versus reality. Usually when people have expectations versus reality, the expectations are better than the reality. So let's hope that this is not the case with this tracker. At the end of the month, in my ultimate final video of March, I will report on how successful I was at using this template. As I said at the beginning of this video and throughout this video, I wanted to make sure that the template was available to you. How you can download this template is, one, you have to set up a Notion account. It's free, it's great, but if you don't want to set it up and give another company your data, I totally understand, but that is the only way that you can use this template, is in that program. If you do have a Notion account, what you do is you just click on the link in the description box below, and then it will take you to the reading template. After that, what you're going to do is you're going to make a copy of that template and then add it to your Notion board. Once you make a copy, it should be fully customizable so that you can edit it, you can type in dates, you can type in books, you can type in page numbers, and you can slay your reading goals. That is all I have for you in today's video. I'm really curious how this reading tracking is gonna go. Again, this is my first time ever tracking my reading. I would love to know in the comments if you track your reading, if you set reading goals, or if you're like I used to be and you just kind of read based on your mood and you don't really track it, you just read whenever you want to read. I honestly wonder if maybe the reason why that worked for so long and why it doesn't work now is because when we're kids, it's easier for us to read more. The older we get, the more I just feel like responsibilities and things that make us anxious or stressed kind of take over our minds, so it's harder to sit down and truly focus on reading. I saw a meme and I thought it was so funny. It was like, if only I had the concentration of 13-year-old me when I was reading a book, and that's so true. I used to read books way faster than I do now. Hopefully having a goal setting system around reading will help me, and perhaps it'll help you as well. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I would love if you would consider subscribing if you're not already, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button so other book lovers can find this video. Hitting the thumbs up button also just really helps my channel, so you'll have my eternal gratitude if you did it. If you would like to read The Cousins by Karen M. McManus this month with some awesome people and myself, then I will link my Patreon book club down below as well. It's going to be an awesome time. Even though you're watching this video on March 3rd, it's not too late to join in on our March book club read. I would love to have you over there. As always, I will see you down in the comments and in my next video.